Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Civivi Sentinel Strike 2. By the time you guys are seeing this video, it will be available. So I'll have it linked down in the description so that you guys can pick it up if you want to. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. So this is obviously the Sentinel Strike 2. The Sentinel Strike, the original one, had a different blade shape. This one feels, if I remember the original Sentinel Strike, like it was a good knife. This feels exceptional. This might be Civivi's nicest button lock ever. And they've always done a good job. As far as plunge locks go, they're not the most reliable locking systems. Like if we're comparing all of the different companies who have done these plunge locks ever since the Malibu set off the button lock craze, right? But out of all the companies, I feel like Civivi does the most consistent job of giving us a knife that's going to lock up well enough for most people, right? I mean, if you chop down trees with your folding knives, then this isn't going to be for you. But if you're using a knife like a knife should be used, this will be just fine. It also feels very crisp off the deployment, which is something that Civivi does really, really well. The button lock itself is acting as the detent. So when that's the case, sometimes some companies tend to be a little mushy or crunchy or just not super satisfactory, right? Because we all like that crisp detent ball feeling. This is about as close to that as you can get with it still being a plunge lock. Really nice and a compound grind here. We're going to go over all the details, but I wanted to say that right in the beginning. This is a truly impressive knife, but a couple of small details here. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this knife. I thought I had my my measuring tape out, but apparently my measuring tape, there it is, has wandered off. The overall length of the Sentinel Strike 2 is coming in at, wow, 8.5 inches. This is a bigger knife than I thought. For some reason, I thought it was only about 8 inches long, but no, it's an 8.5 inch knife with a 3.75 inch blade and 3.35 inches of cutting edge. Definitely a larger guy. Doesn't feel that big. It definitely feels smaller, which is a good thing. That's what you want. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Any custom scales in this section you can be found. Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and others. So up against something like the 8010, you can see here, it is the same length, 100%. It's nowhere near as robust, and you're getting very similar cutting edge, and not quite the same height. It's a smaller knife overall, but the same length, right? Way bigger than something like the 80-20.5. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3? Definitely larger than both, but it doesn't feel bigger than the PM2. I would have guessed just by holding it that it was the same size or smaller, and that's probably because it weighs or it feels, well, the problem is my opinion on the PM2 is slightly skewed because I've had these titanium scales on there for so long, but it does still feel like a smaller knife. I think maybe folded up, it's not quite as tall, which we'll look at here in just a moment. Let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, and the Hogue Deca. Okay, so how's the action? Kind of like what I was saying. The action is really, really good. It also has thumb studs. You got to forgive me. I'm being a little timid with my thumb. If you guys watched that video where I cycled the Max Ace Neptune 300 times in order to figure out if the PEI would crack, it didn't, but I absolutely annihilated my thumb. So if you're wondering, did you really cycle it 300 times? I did, and I should have worn gloves. That was actually really painful, and I need to heal. So the thumb that I use to deploy a knife with thumb studs, right, or that I, like if I'm trying to operate an OTF, like I am basically out of commission right now. I can do it, but it hurts. This thumb stud here is actually really, really well done. It's domed off at the top, couple of steps. It's not big, but it's fine. It's very, very comfortable, and it works perfectly. You can easily thumb flick it. You can easily reverse flick it. It feels really good. Obviously, the button lock disengagement is nice and smooth. The blade is incredibly smooth on those those bearings there. And then the flipper tab is just like a basic flipper tab, but you can light switch it or you can push button it, right? Whichever way you want to do it. It's just good. It's exactly what you'd expect. Let's do carry profile. thickness up against the Spyderco PM2. Well, we do the Para 3 because those are the scales that are similar to the stock scales. It's actually thinner than the Para 3. Let's put it this way up against the PM2 and Para 3. And this is why I feel like it carries, or it feels like a smaller knife than it is. Closed up, it's smaller than the PM2, and it is longer than the Para 3, but it's not quite as tall. So let's weigh it. What are we looking at for material? So this is aluminum, which they've finished in a way that makes it look like titanium. So it's very pleasing to the touch and to the eye. And then we have this wraparound backspacer, which they have done on a few different things now. They've done this on some inexpensive stuff, and they've definitely done it on some of the more expensive stuff. But I really like it. It kind of gives that, gives it that integral spine look. It's just kind of unique, right? We don't really see this outside of Civivi. I doubt that they're the first company to do it, and they definitely won't be the last, but it is cool, right? And it adds a little bit of cost, a little bit. The only bummer for me is that they chose FRN as the material to do this. It's fine, but man, it would have been so much more classy to do G10 or to do micarta, and it definitely would have been more expensive. So I can understand it because the price on this Civivi is higher than your average Civivi. But it was just kind of, it's okay, it's cool, but the material, I really wish that it was something else. So, but that's what you're looking at there. And then you're looking at a compound Nitro V blade, which as far as steels that fall into the budget territory periodically, Nitro V is going to be one of the more expensive ones, but not an expensive steel in and of itself. So let's go ahead and weigh it here. Do we have milling for weight reduction? I doubt it. No, just the pockets that are accepting the sides of this wraparound backspacer here. 3.7 ounces, no shock there. With a 3.75-inch blade, the ratios are fantastic, and your balance is literally right behind the pivot. That is really, really nice, and that's also what's making it feel lighter and smaller than it actually is in a good way. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. Where is that? Yeah, it's T8. So just like pretty much every other Civivi, it's going to be a T8. And then for the backspacer, the wraparound thing, they actually chose T6 screws, which is a bummer. You have, this is one of those, where you have to like use a tiny, there's a bunch of, you could just use like pliers or whatever, but you have to unscrew this, and it's still better, like the way that they've done this, the pocket clip can be flipped around to the other side. And we have a slightly different clip. This is annoying. Civivi still worked in the bill, just subtly. I swear that somebody at Civivi going, add that little piece in there at the end. Metal Complex hates that. Dang it! But the clip is a little bit better than your standard Civivi clips, not quite as high, and it can be reversed to the other side so that left-hand people can enjoy this almost exactly the same way that right-handed people can. So you have T6 screws, but not necessarily more hardware than your typical folding knife. This will still be very easy to take apart and put back together. As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. Let me whip out my calipers here, which is a weird way to say that. I don't usually say it like that, sorry. I'm going to guess about 115 thousandths blade stock thickness, so nice and thin. Okay, meat and potatoes time. We have a profile that's very classic. See this knife handle? This knife handle profile has been used by, I would venture to guess, thousands of designs within the last few decades. Like, this is about as classic as it gets for a knife handle profile. Very Les George VECP, right? That's the one that comes to mind. But it works, and it's got an open back end, which means you're not confined by one of those stupid, like this. And I get it. I know why, right? Because it's cold steel. You're going to be hardcore. I'm going to be fighting buffaloes and scaling buildings. I got to lock in, bro. Like, okay, fine. For everybody else, this is much more comfortable because you're not being smashed in back here. So I like this open back end. Really like that. Sometimes I don't hear it till it's out, The choke up area is also extremely comfortable, and it complements the the jimping space really well for the thumb. Wish it was slightly longer, but that's okay. Just really overall very, very comfortable. And I think the fact that the pocket clip bill is slightly lower on this model, for some reason, Civivi, you're getting there, right? I'd give that clip a B+. It's very comfortable. Incredibly, incredibly comfortable. Everything feels very natural and organic, and that's because this is like, it's an ergonomic profile that we've seen a million times. It just works. It's also a larger knife, right? Not saying it's an XL knife, saying it's larger, so you have lots of space. These open areas work really well. They're nice and friendly. Straight back here. Has that very classic, like, American knife. I know it's not made in America, but it has that classic, like, American knife profile. Nice wedge. We got a little flat here. This is kind of like that, I don't know if it's some sort of ceramic blasting or whatever it is they're using, but has that sort of overcast sky look. You have a flat that runs out maybe 70%, 75% the length of the blade, right? And then you have this compound area right here. We have a hollow initial grind. And in the middle of that hollow grind, there's a change here in the edge, a distinct change. Now, as you sharpen this over time, I don't even know why they would do this. The very first time you sharpen this, you're going to lose that, which is fine. I would say go ahead. Like, why change the angle just to keep this little lump right here? Just if you're going to use this and sharpen it, just sharpen it through, right? I don't know why they did that, but fine. You know, whatever. It doesn't really matter. And I think you probably have a better experience cutting too, because it won't be like friction from a certain angle and then friction, like it's like a friction change, you know, it'll be subtle, but some people will notice it, especially when there's more drag in the material that you're cutting. So very thin up front. Should point that out. Civivi has a wonderful factory edge, an astounding factory edge. And they've made this nice and thin off a spine that's not thick to begin with. Then you have a flat grind up here, but it's also pretty thin as far as flat grinds go on compound blades. So yeah, you're good to go. This is a pretty good utilitarian blade chip. I mean, you're not going to gain, like in an EDC setting, you won't gain a massive benefit from the compound blade, but it's fine, right? I feel like a compound grind probably has way more benefit on like a really robust fixed blade where you're trying to maximize tip strength and then you're trying to, you know, allow for the edge to be thinner so that, you know, doing certain outdoor tasks, probably processing maybe wood or something. I don't know. Maybe it makes that slightly easier. I have no idea. I just feel like a compound grind probably benefits, like in a real utilitarian sense, it probably benefits a fixed blade user, you know, more so. But it is cool to look at. And in this case, we've taken a thin blade stock and made it even thinner. So it'll be nice and slicey. Nitro V, good balance. We're all very familiar with Nitro V. The truth is that in this territory, Nitro V doesn't have any attributes that make it a specific standout when you're actually using this as compared to, let's say, VG10, 154cm, 14C28N, D2, right? I would say if it's properly heated D2 and you're cutting and you're cutting and you're cutting, you'll notice that the D2 is going to hold an edge longer than a lot of these competitor steels at this price point. Everything else is going to feel like, oh, it's stainless and it cuts for a bit and then I need to resharpen it and it's not that hard to resharpen. And that's the truth. That's pretty much what you're going to experience, right? Somebody who's using their knives in very, very specific ways consistently would probably notice the difference between a lot of this stuff. Ultimately, what I'm saying is Nitro V is a more than acceptable steel at this price point, and it will perform well for, you know, for the money that you paid for it. It's a good steel. It's definitely one of the ones that you want, a good balance, right? But anyways, let's go ahead and do... what should we talk about next? There's not really a whole lot to talk about here, right? I mean, we've got the branding minimal, like always. There's nothing on the blade except for the incredibly minimal, almost microscopic Nitro V on the back there. Everything feels very, very crisp. I think a lot of what Civivi has been doing, with what we has been doing with a lot of their premium stuff, where there was a noticeable change in some models, maybe starting about a year and a half ago. I think one of the first ones that I handled, it was like the Cybernetic, and then it was the GTC collab, and I thought, what on earth did we just leveled up? Like, there was a huge difference in the execution of their knives. They went from really good knives to absolutely astonishing. It just incredible. And I feel like some of that, whatever those processes, maybe they updated machines or they have new processes or whatever. Obviously, we and Civivi, like, they're pumping money back into their company and they're using it to refine the quality of their knives. And knives like this, it's very obvious. Like, this compared to a Civivi from 4 or 5 years ago is night and day. I still have some old Civivis, and I should talk about that sometime, about the noticeable change. I mean, this is the type of stuff that we want to see. A company should be dramatically better over a 5-year period. That's what we want to see. And Civivi and that's definitely the case. Civivi knives were nice 5 years ago. This is incredible, like the quality. But we take it for granted because this is just what we expect. We've just been slowly, we've been like integrating, I guess. We've just been slowly exposed to slightly better and better and better quality. So now we get it. If you buy a lot of Civivi knives, you're like, yeah, that's what they feel like. But really trying to isolate this and experience it, it really is just absolutely amazing. I'm using wrist here, but you don't need wrist. It really is amazing, versus 5 years ago. It's absolutely incredible. And this is a top tier button lock flipper from Civivi. Little lanyard hole back here. Again, I appreciate the way that they did this pocket clip. This is a nice way to do this. And honestly, it's the answer to a lot of like, well, we had the law, couldn't do it for lefties. We had to put the screws on the other side, and people they get really upset about that. They just, they just cry their pants and fill it up with spaghetti, and it's just a mess. Put the screw in the back. Like, this is how you can do that. A lot of people don't like how that looks, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's got a little glass breaker back there, so that's fine if you need to break glass, which apparently a lot of you do. Every time I make fun of these, there are people who are like, hey, listen. This guy sounds like the last voice that I did. You listen here, Bob. What character am I creating right now? Hey, you listen here. You're sitting there making fun of glass breakers, huh? You ever had to use one? You better hope you don't have to use it. Is it like an angry guy from New York? Is that what we're doing? I hope I don't ever have to use a glass breaker. I hope I don't, but there's one here. So, okay. I like that it's small. So it's not in the way, but this is a good way to do this. Like the fact that this exists, so many companies you just don't have an excuse, right, to not put a pocket clip on your knife that's mountable for left and right-handed people, right? In and out of the pocket, it's nice and smooth. It is sitting on top of this texture, but this texture of this FRN is not aggressive. It's super smooth. It might as well be a smooth surface. There's really no difference here, right? 3 holes for what? I don't know. It's there so that it looks slightly less boring in this area, I guess. A little bit of personality there, not much. I do like that this is all covered. You can't touch the blade. Not that it would be close, but there's no way to touch the blade. There's a stop pin back here. We have actually a lot of shouldering. There's absolutely no blade play up, down, left, or right. No button or lock stick. No pivot lash. Very smooth and consistent in here. Your detent is, man, if it didn't have that slight like swoop sort of event horizon pull in, I would say this was a detent ball. It's really crisp. It feels super high quality and obviously perfect centering with not a hint of detent play, which is not usually what you get with a button lock, right? You holding a button lock right now? I know what you're doing. You're sitting there flipping your knife watching this video. Is it a button lock? Put the knife in the closed position and wiggle the flipper tab like this. Do you feel play? Like it's going click, 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 click in the closed position? If I just introduced that to you for the first time, sorry. That's really going to annoy you from this point forward. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong with your knife, but it's an indication of less than ideal tolerances. So I've come to appreciate Civivi's plunge locks because they are absolutely perfect. They do not have any play in the closed position. So this was a good tool. It's very similar to a lot of knives like this. I mean, I have used and carried countless knives that are just like this. It's just a very nice execution of this. It's all of what Civivi is capable in one button lock knife. And it's a nice larger knife, and it has that wraparound backspacer. What would make this knife perfect for me is, one, if the wraparound backspacer was micarta or G10, and 2, if this knife came in at $75, which I'm sure you guys can tell by the tone of my voice that it did not come in at $75. I'm pretty sure, and now I'm second guessing myself, but I'm pretty sure that this came in at $88 or $89, which is disappointing, but also understandable. And I'll tell you why. There's a bunch of little teeny tiny things that we see in budget knives that sometimes we get. Most of the time we get some of this stuff, but not all of it, right? In this case, we got everything. We got the nice compound blade. That's going to add a little bit of cost. We got that wraparound backspacer. It's going to add a little cost. Not a lot, right? We have the aluminum frame instead of, something else like those steel liners with the G10 or plastic or whatever. It's going to cost a little bit more. Not a lot, right? We got Nitro V. That's probably one of the more expensive steels that Civivi uses, if not the most expensive steel that Civivi uses. So we got that too. Add all of that stuff together, and yeah, it doesn't surprise me this came in over $75. But I was thinking, man, if I can put this thing on a budget knife list, because truthfully, I'll tell you this didn't make my top 10 best budget knives of 2024 because it's not a budget knife by my own standards. It's not a $75 knife. If this was $75 on the dot, it would be included and it would be near the top of the list. This is a crazy nice knife. It's not anything aesthetically spectacular, right? And there's a lot of competition out there, but it's super well built, and anybody who picks it up is going to notice it immediately and appreciate it. This is just it's just a good product. So should you spend $89? I would look around. I would look through. I mean, like if you're thinking about buying this Civivi knife for $88 or $89, whatever it is, I would just look through everything that Civivi's got to offer, because truthfully, they've got $50 or $60 knives that are also really, really excellent. There might be some elements here that you don't really care about. But if you're looking at this and you're like, this is for me. Like, I got $90 burning a hole in my pocket. Like, I want a new knife. Like, is this a good? Yeah, this is so nice. You'll love this. It's really great, right? But there's a lot of competition out there, and this is just, it's pretty high, and it's a Civivi, right? If you're gonna go, if Civivi's gonna make a knife and they're gonna go over that $75 price tag, it better be something really special. And this is special. I just think it's not gonna convince everybody, So, yeah, that's my review. Generally speaking, though, this is a recommendable product. It's just a little bit high on the price tag. Thanks so much to Civivi for sending this in. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.